Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Angel. That song reminded me, we're in the middle of a self-mastery class, and so we're working on the 4 agreements. And the second agreement, or the first agreement, is be impeccable with your words. And I love that verse that says, all that you say and all that you do, it really matters, you know. It really matters to be careful, to be care-filled with our words. Yeah. So this morning, do you like my props? Or do you get scared when I have props?
A little of both.
Yeah. Well, I will be asking for 3 volunteers. But okay, first, who has heard of Homeboy Industries? Yeah? About half of us, a little bit more than half. Okay. So I didn't find out about Homeboy Industries or Father Gregory Boyle for about, since probably 3 years ago. And I was so inspired by him. In 1986, he was sent to Dolores Mission Church in East LA, which in 1986 had the largest housing projects this side of the Mississippi, had the most gang members and gang violence in America. And he found a need, and he filled it. He's a Jesuit priest, and the Jesuits come from Ignatius of Loyola. In 1532, they were founded, and they're founded on the premise of having compassion and servitude for those who are demonized, for those who are marginalized, and to find support for those in prisons and on the outskirts of life. And so that's what he did. And Homeboy Industries now has a various amount of services. They offer tattoo removal, they have job training, they provide jobs, they do a lot of counseling, and amongst other things. And I learned about it just by picking up Tattoos on the Heart. And there's also another book called Barking to the Choir. And in those books, what I found through his ability to have an open heart, what I was able to hear and find is the experience of the sacred in so many areas that I never would have thought. How many times do either we or people in the world come up to someone who's fully tatted out, right, from head to toe, and we're like, ooh, you get that feeling inside of you, a little bit scared, maybe you're frightened, maybe you want to run away, or say, oh, I know this person and I would never have anything in common. Maybe none of us do that. Some people do. Or you see a woman and she's got piercings from head to toe and she looks pretty, feisty, or so we think. And we cringe and kind of just say, okay, not my people. Or we see somebody standing on the side of the road with another sign that says, help me, and we internally get a little irritated or frustrated, or our heart hurts. And then we see a sunset and we think, oh, I see God. And we see a baby smile and we think, oh, I feel God. And we feel joy in our heart and we think, oh, that is the presence of Spirit. Why is that? Is God only in that which is comfortable and safe and beautiful? Is it? No, not my idea of it anyway. And use that word God interchangeably with whatever it is that is your higher power, whatever it is that you recognize as a power and presence that is greater than you are, that is a divine intelligence that supports and encompasses your life. If you don't like the word God, I understand it's a trigger for some people, but let's just, what is that called? Let's translate for ourselves, okay? And so I was reminded of this idea that Meister Eckhart said, and we'll get back to the Homeboy Industries in a moment. He said, God is greater than God. God is greater than God. God is greater than God. And I think, how do we know this unless we experience it? So that is what the props are for. Do I have 3 volunteers to help me? Yeah? Okay. Who, and who? Anybody in the back? Yeah? There you go. Oh, Carol. And we have one more. Do we have a hand? Anybody? Yeah? Oh, okay. Okay, Freddie. Here you go. When you guys are done, you can pass them around if anybody else wants to feel this experience. So I just want you to grab the globe and hold it. Just hold it in 2 hands, hold it up, and look right in front of you. Just look right in front of you. The deal is we can't see what we're not looking at, right? So this is our view of the world. If you can see Brazil and the South Atlantic Ocean, raise your hand. You? Okay, so none of you can see it, right? You're not moving your globe around. You're looking at the perimeter, their circumference, the middle, and everywhere, and you don't see it all, right? But this is an entire Earth, yes? And so in order for you to know it, I'm going to have to describe it to you, yes? So I'm going to have to say, oh, well, it's kind of like a triangle, sort of, and it's got water all around it. And you begin to know it only by trusting that I am describing it. Yes? Yes. And I don't know what you can see. What can you see? India, Australia. And what is that? I have no idea, unless you become vulnerable enough to share it with me, yes? Because I do not know. And so imagine for a moment that this is the entirety of life, of spirit, of God, of source. And you can see it from your limited perspective. And you're looking straight at it, and you know it like you know it like you know it. And yet I'm looking at mine, and it is completely different than yours. And I have no idea what your image or experience of God is, of the divine is from your side, yes? Yes. And you don't know it from mine. And so what do? How do we begin to learn this fullness, this vastness that is life, that is spirit? Yeah. And we listen with an open heart. We listen and we have faith and we trust in others that when they open up and share their expression of God, that it is too sacred. That it is also a sacred facet of this entirety that is God, that I can only see this much, and there is so much more that I don't know. God is greater than God. We don't know what we don't know until we know it. One of my favorite experiences or stories that Father Gregory Boyle tells, it really solidifies this idea of seeing the sacred and really knowing it from somebody else's viewpoint, where they could have never seen it before. And so Father Gregory gets asked to give these talks. And so he takes 2 of his homies with him, Spider and Muggsy, as they are called. And he takes them down to Palm Desert, and they're going to speak in front of a whole auditorium of teenagers. And when they get down there, they're still in the car, and he says to them, he goes, now remember that every gangbanger, when he recovers, realizes that he was never running towards anything, but he was fleeing from something. That people don't enter gang life because they're searching for a family, because they're looking for a community. They are always running from something. And he said, remember that when you speak to these teenagers. And so Spider, he gets to be the first one to step up and speak. And so there's an auditorium of teenagers, and they're all there quietly ready to listen. And both of these men, they're in their mid-30s. Sleepy. I don't keep everybody awake, I guess. There's sleepy, they're not sleepy. Okay, Spider, Muggsy, they're in their 30s. They go through this rotation of drug addiction, gang violence, incarceration. Drug addiction, gang violence, incarceration. And so it goes, and so it goes, probably since they were 10, 12, and on. And they're in their mid-30s now. And so Spider comes up, and he starts with this story, and he says, you know, I entered a gang when I was 10, 12 years old, couldn't remember. He said, I started using, and I dropped out of high school. And then he just gets quiet, really quiet. So quiet that it becomes awkward. Father Gregory thinks, do I need to help him? Is he stalled? And he breathes. And this is a big guy. He's like menacing, scary looking if you saw him on the streets, right? But then he starts talking, and he's the sweetest man. And he goes, you know what? I was about 5, I think. I was out in the back playing with some matches, you know, like kids do. He goes, and my mom caught me. She caught me. So she pulled me inside. And we had one of those electric stoves that had the coils that turn red hot. He said, and she told me how bad I was for playing with the fire. And so she put my hand on the burning hot red coals and kept it there. He goes, and then I woke up with my hand in the toilet, trying to relieve it with some water because it was burning and pussing. He says, and then I left. I fled the danger and found a gang so that in some way I could be protected. He said it wasn't until he found Homeboy Industries and went through the counseling and the reprogramming and the training that he ended up actually loving himself and his life and finding a way to forgive those, especially his mom, who had hurt him so badly, because he realized that no one who's healthy, no one who's happy, no one who's living a life that they dream of could ever do that to someone else. I have these quotes I wanted to share with you all. I'm just going to pass them around because I found it to be the most supportive thing. I'm just going to say, take one and pass it down. Here you go. Just take them and pass them down. No big deal. Just pass them backwards. And it says, divine love is incessantly restless until it turns all woundedness into health, all deformity into beauty, and all embarrassment into laughter. Can you say that with me real quick? Divine love is incessantly restless until it turns all woundedness into health, all deformity into beauty, and all embarrassment into laughter. Divine love is always with us, always working for us. I remember a time when I was in my mid-20s, about probably 10 years ago, and I was sitting in my car, and I was like at my lowest of my lowest point. I was addicted to alcohol and pills, and I was a mess. And then I heard the voice of God by means of my radio, and Bob Dylan speaks up, and I knew it was God. And it said, I would go hungry. I would go black and blue. I would go crawling down the avenue. There is nothing that I wouldn't do to make you feel my love. Spirit said that to me over and over again. I would go hungry. I would go black and blue. I, Spirit, would go crawling down the avenue with you. There is nothing that I wouldn't do to make you feel my love. And I know that. And I know that Spirit is with each and every one of us. There is a divine goodness and a divine life within every one of us. And we don't always feel it. And we don't always know it. But it's there. Right here, at the center of our very being. It's there. Even in the darkest times, even in the brightest light, it is there. And it's there for us. And so it is. Thank you. Thank you. Love you.
Thank you, Reverend Nicole. Moving props is like getting back in the TV room after the teenagers have had their way at it. Isn't it great you have a minister that's a millennial and one that's a baby boomer, though, huh? I'm going to continue on in that theme. Meister Eckhart says, God is greater than God. And to me, what that really speaks to is God is always greater than our perception of God. And that makes perfect sense because our perception of God is based on who we are, the transitions that we've made, the incitement that we've had, but we're only seeing what we can see at the time. God is so much greater. And if Father Gregory came here and shared with you what he taught about Jesus, I assure you it would be exactly what we teach. Because what he teaches about Jesus is that he came here to show us compassion and unconditional love. And he didn't come here to affirm the structure of the day. In fact, on both sides of the spectrum, they were not happy with him. The ones that wanted the order didn't like that he was hanging out with the misfits and those that no one wanted to look at. And there were ones about him that was wanting him to fight the battle and fight the structure of the day. But he did neither one. He was there with the lepers. He was there with the ones who were cast out. And he was just hanging with them. And what he was showing was, what we talked about yesterday in our class, was there's the essence of the divine in everywhere we go. There is no place that we can go that God is not. And sometimes we have to see God from a different perspective. We don't have to change God. We have to take the attitude, the essence of trying to see things as God sees them more. And so what Father Greg picked up on that, his message to the homies was, where we stand right now is on holy ground, because it is. And that there's that message of humility, that message of loving another one, not trying to change the other one, not trying to change the person that are persecuting them or unhappy with them, but being right in their space and loving them where they are. The poet Kabir asked the question, what is God? And he answers that God is the breath inside the breath. So wherever we are, whatever limitation we have this divine spiritual essence that we do not have to ever work for, and it is ours by divine birthright. And Father Gregory had a choice. He could go on. He sort of had a calling to be with the poor, and he had a choice. He could go on and be something in academia, some supervisor of sorts, or he could stay doing what he was doing with the poor. And he liked to go to Bolivia. That's where his missionary duties were. And he had a very poignant experience there that chose the way for him. He went there, and he was a missionary in a town, in a rural town in the valley. And they went and said to him, Father Greg, we need you to go give Mass to the health workers and the farm workers up in the mountain area. They haven't had Mass for a year. Would you do that? And he says, yes, that's what I do. I'll be glad to. So he's halfway up the mountain on the bus and just gathering his things, looking at his things. He's got everything he needs except the missalette, which has the Mass in Spanish. And he's still a young man. He said he had just been 1 year ordained, so that would probably put him in his late 20s. And he has a Spanish Bible. He drastically tries to get some phrases. When Jesus was eating and passing the bread and the wine, he writes some down, and he's just totally distraught. He's feeling like he's useless and worthless. So they get to the event. It's a big event. There's this big field. There's this big feast. And the way it goes was he gives the Mass in Spanish, and there's a translator that translates it into the native language. And so he's there, and he's doing his pitiful little translations he got out of the Bible. And sometimes the words just don't even come. So when they don't come, he pitifully holds up the bread and holds up the wine, and he's just feeling distraught about himself. And at the end of it, he's really not feeling good about himself, and this lady comes to him and says, "There's someone that needs confession. Can you do it?" He says, "Of course, I'm a pastor, that's what I do." So that ends up lasting for 30 minutes. And then he looks around, and the bus is gone. No one's there. And it's his to walk home down that mountain, feeling all that shame, all that disgrace that's going on inside of him. And then this farm worker approaches him, comes up to him, and he looks at the man. The man is not very tall. There's lots of wrinkles on his face. He doesn't know if it's from a hard life or he's really old. He's in some woolen pants that instead of a belt, he has a rope through it. He has this button-down white shirt that he's worn to every great spiritual event forever. It's frayed around the edges, around the cuffs, around the collar. He has his old woolen coat. That's what they wore up there, both to work in and his coat up there. He has his ancient fedora on. And he comes up to Father Greg, and he, in the native language, he thanks him for being of service and coming there. And he motions for Father Greg to bend down, and Father Greg obliges. And the farm workers there, what they did is they cut fresh flowers and trekked them down the mountain and made whatever little money they could. So this man takes 2 fistfuls of rose petals of different colors out of his pockets and just pours them over Father Greg's head. And then the rose petals start mixing with the tears that are pouring from Father Greg. And he does it one more time. He grabs 2 more fistfuls of roses and pours them on them. And as Father Greg shares about this experience, he says, "Then I understood that there's a God that sees things beyond what I can see. There's a God that's smiling down at me and you that doesn't know what disgrace is, that doesn't know what failure is. All it knows is that you are his beloved son, and you're loved by very much." In his words, it's a powerful place for us to be because we recognize that what we see is tainted by the judgments and everything else that we allow into our consciousness. And Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, always says this about God: we always focus on the God that is always greater. And in terms of the community on that speaks, I want to tell you one final story. It's about a homie named Pedro. And Pedro's brother had just committed suicide. And most homies don't die by committing suicide. They just go to a place they're not supposed to be and they get killed. So it's not that common. And Pedro, Father Greg shares that Pedro was 30 days sober, and he was glad because he was 30 days sober that he could feel the pain and the emotions in his core rather than letting them flitter around on the peripherals. And then Pedro says to Father Greg, and they called him G, that was their nickname for him, says, "G, I had a dream and you were in it. We were in this dark, dark warehouse, and I needed to have light. and I couldn't find the light switch anywhere. And he says, gee, you had a flashlight. You punched that flashlight on. You shined that flashlight onto the switch. And then I was waiting for you to turn it on. And then I realized turning it on was mine to do. And he turned it on, and Pedro gets emotional and said, and then, gee, I realized that the light is better than the darkness. And then Father Greg shares that that's what we're here for. We're here to be with the people exactly where they are, to shine the light, not fix them, not fix those that are persecuted, but just to empower them and to shine the light. And in this community, I think this is an extremely beloved community. That's what we're here for each other. We all get to our points of darkness, to our points where we're mad at someone, we may be judgmental about someone, or we're drastically hurt. Someone's really done us some hurt. And that's what we're here for each other. We're here for each other to be the one that puts your arm around that person, grabs the flashlight, shines the light, and empower and love them for them to go turn the switch on. Because I guarantee you that light is better than darkness. So my challenge for you is go out and either grab a flashlight and assist someone, or get over what you need to get over and get through your challenge, and you go flip that light switch on for yourself. Thank you.